Hello, Namaste, and welcome to another session of Big Byte. And this one is about inclusion. So let's call this as Big Byte Inclusion 2.0. And the reason I'm saying that is Inclusion 2.0 is because we have discussed about inclusion, but here we're going to talk about the LGBTQ community, the challenges and the opportunities ahead of us. We know that this sounds a little controversial, but let me tell you, this is more about creating a space of sensitivity, and it's a human story that I want to bring to all of you. Most importantly, this is a thought starter, this is a conversation starter for all of us to actively participate in. So, I'm going to encourage all of you to think about all the questions that might pop up, use your curiosity and the curiosity behavior to bring about those questions that we can address over a period of time. Remember that the guest that I'm introducing is going to provoke us as well, and it will be very, very interesting for us to use those provocative ideas and translate them into actions in everyday life. Most importantly, remember that you are free to send in your questions. Some of the best questions will be selected, and we have some surprises for those questions as well. So I look forward to that. I'm going to introduce you to my guest today. His name is Parmesh Sahni. Parmesh was born and brought up in Mumbai and grew up in many places around the world. He has had his education across multiple geographies. He holds a master's degree in comparative media studies from MIT in the US. He has also been an advocate for the LGBTQ community and actively worked with many companies in guiding their inclusion agenda. He is also an author, and two of his books have been bestsellers. The first one has been Gay Bombay, Globalization, Love and Belonging in Contemporary India. And the second one is Queeristan, LGBTQ Inclusion in the Indian Workplace. They have been standouts in their own way and have helped companies in framing what their policies will be as far as inclusion is concerned. He is also a TEDx speaker. He is also a Yale World Fellow and has been very actively championing the cause of many marginalized groups that have created an impact for the rest of the economy in India. So let's welcome Parmesh to this program of inclusion in the Big Byte series. Parmesh Sahani. What we going
Coke
to
with Parmesh.
cook with Parmesh?
Pani with Parmesh.
There is Maza and thumbs up also with Parmesh.
Coffee bath mein.
And we're going to learn a lot about him today. So the first question that comes to you, and this has come from a whole lot of folks that we've spoken to. We want to know, what are your early memories of Coke? How has this been an association for you in your life? What brands have you enjoyed so far?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Hi to all of you. I'm really happy to be in your beautiful office, enjoying this day and having one of my favorite brands, which is Coke Zero, zero sugar. Yummy, crisp, beautiful. Um, I've loved Coke growing up, and I'm 46. You all are in India since 25 years, so congratulations. But even before this, right, I grew up in the Middle East. So my parents were working in Dubai and Bahrain, and also Rani is like a favorite brand of mine. I just love those little fruit pieces, and we have some of it here in Minute Maid now. So I love that. Of course, I love classic Coke, but having traveled all over the world, I've loved Cherry Coke as well. I love the whole portfolio that y'all have built now, from water to teas. When I'm in America, I love Honesty, really, really. And I love vitamin water here as well. I'm glad that y'all are bringing it. So you can say I'm a fan of all the different brands. But more than ever, I'm a fan of Coke itself. So I've been very blessed. I've gone to the Coke Museum in Atlanta. I've tried all the various flavors. And it's free with one entrance ticket. You can have as much as you want. So I went quite mad. And I used to collect Coke memorabilia growing up, because growing up in Oman and Bahrain and all of that, inside these cans, you would have those contests. So my first cycle I got from Coke. So thank you. It was a beautiful red cycle. because I collected enough cans and I won a contest. I have a beautiful Coke, literally so huge, life-size bottle, which had a CD player and cassette player inside it, which is more than 20 years old. All the electronics have stopped working, but it takes pride of place in my living room. I've kept it as a sculpture. So, love all of y'all. Love what you do in India. Love what you've been doing for so many years. I remember from the first time it launched, those beautiful Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan ads. And remember in the World Cup, the Mast Mast. Oh my God, I saw that campaign and I was like, this is so beautiful. And right, everything that Coke has done over the years, right, whether globally with Santa Claus, I mean, just genius, to American Idol, Indian Idol, to Coke Studio. I mean, the interventions in culture as well, right? Going into a global brand, but understanding that you only create that kind of loving relationship when you invest deeply in the cultural context of that country and that locality. So I'm a fan of the products, the experiences, the cultural inventions, everything. I'm a fan. So as you can see, I tried to wear Coke Red, at least my variation of Coke Red today.
And you're looking great.
Thank you.
Great. Parmesh, you grew up in Mumbai and you have had education in multiple countries. How has that changed you? How has it made you think very differently as you interacted with so many different kinds of people across the world?
Thanks. So I have great FOMO for young people today because people across, whether in our cities or whether in smaller towns, have so much more exposure because education in India itself has changed so much. And plus, there is the internet and there are so many other things. I grew up in the 80s and in the 90s. I grew up in a very simple middle class home in Mumbai. My mother was a clerk at Bank of Baroda. My father worked in a small shop, and I went to a English medium, but SSC school, which is a Maharashtra state school. So my fees were 7 rupees a month when I was in 7th standard and 8 rupees a month in 8th standard, and the girls went free. So it was a very different kind of, it was a simple time, it was a more innocent time. It was a time where education meant maybe going to school, studying, mugging, giving exams, and coming back. And so it was beautiful, but it was also, as a gay person, as a gay young person growing up in India, there was so little access to information. So I often felt alone. I was very comfortable with who I was because, I grew up, it was one of the most natural things to me. Like, I thought it's strange that I was like, why do straight boys have to like the opposite gender? How weird is that? I was like, isn't it more natural to like, if you're a boy, shouldn't you be liking boys? So to me, that was natural, right? Just like for straight people, being straight is natural. But at that time, with so little access to information, you feel lonely, you feel alone. And when all of society is kind of geared towards making heterosexuality the norm, you feel very isolated. And at least during the time I grew up, schools were not equipped. Even still today in most of India, I don't think at schools children are taught about gender, about sexuality, about about love, and so many other things like they're taught in other parts of the world, perhaps. Nor are we taught in our colleges as well. So while school itself was wonderful, I felt very, very lonely. Thankfully, I was a nerdy kid. I would love reading. So I read up so much about the fact that being LGBTQ is very much part of Indian culture, whether in the Mahabharata with characters like Shikhandi, whether in the Ramayana. There's a beautiful story of how there were so many Hijras who waited for Lord Ram when he went, into exile and came back. And when they came back, Lord Ram told them, "Why are you waiting on the road?" And he said, "Because, when you left, you said all the men and women should go back and not follow me, but we are the third gender. So we said, perhaps we have to wait here for you." And then Lord Ram blessed them and said that I give you these boons and so on and so forth. So, reading up about, and there is presence of queerness in Islamic texts, there's presence of queerness in Jain texts. So it's very much, so while I didn't have so much, society wasn't very supportive, because I started reading, because I started exploring, I understood that it's very much part of our deep Indian culture. It's very much part of, I was reading about being LGBTQ across the world and all. So I got a lot of confidence from this. But still, at home, I mean, I can tell you about my coming out story with my parents at some point if you want. But at least for me, at home, I felt alone. At school, it was not something that you could talk about as well. So I felt very, very lonely. It changed, and this continued in college as well. It changed fundamentally when I went to America, when I went to a place like MIT to study. Because for the first time in my life, like in India, when I was studying, whether in school or in college, my sexuality had seemed like something I had to hide. It seemed like an obstacle I had to overcome. But for the first time on the MIT campus, it was something that I could celebrate. And the university was celebrating me. So I did an LGBTQ South Asian Film Festival, for example, just after I got there. And the vice president of the university called me to her office. She said, I know you've just come from India and you're trying to do this ambitious thing. I'm giving you $2,000 from my own fund to help you in this. She gave me a list of places I could go and raise money from. MIT had an LGBTQ association which helped me. Other student groups, Black Student Association, Hispanic Student Association, all came forward and said, let us help you. I mean, it was such an inspiring and empowering environment that I really felt so, liberated. Because for years, what something that seemed to be like a burden was now an asset. And I think that's so important. It really gave me wings that I was able to flourish. I was able to fly. I won so many awards. I, of course, did very well. My career, my life completely changed after that experience. And I think it's so important for y'all because I think now we are at a point where if we can create these inspiring environments, if we can create an environment for all our talent and, happy 25 years of Hindustan Coca-Cola beverages, but if the next 25 years can be years in which you say, we are committed to making all our employees flourish. We can, instead of restricting them, we will empower them. I mean, think of the magic that you can create. So I'm like, what I want to share with you from these experiences that, our schools, our colleges, our workplaces, if we can make them into empowering places, I think, it's really, really amazing.
And that's exactly what we are trying to do as well, is provide spaces for all our associates to come, flourish. We always want to bring our best selves to work.
Yeah.
And many of the things that you see, whether it is the design of the offices, the future workplaces, just the future of work, it can't be accomplished without making so many of the other changes,
Yeah.
especially the ones that you also alluded to.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about, because we know that there are so many questions about LGBTQ itself.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit more for everyone to understand what does it really mean? Okay, there is no shame about it, but I'm reflecting on your question. I'm straight. Nobody asked me. I didn't have to tell anybody.
Yeah.
But I think that is on the minds of a lot of people as to, do I come out and say something? But more than that, fundamentally is, what is it that we are looking at? What is the challenge, or what is the opportunity that we need to address here?
Sure. So let me just start with, basically, for those of you who don't know what LGBTQ is, it's very basic. It's L stands for lesbian, which stands for someone who identifies as woman and chooses to love other women. G stands for gay, which is someone who identifies as man and chooses to love other men. B is bisexual, someone who could be either, man or woman and love either. T is trans. Trans is an umbrella term linked to gender. LGB are about sexuality, so we'll come to trans later. Q is actually a very interesting term because could stand for questioning or queer. Queer is anyone who questions the norm, anyone who says that the world could be different. So in that sense, all of you are queer in that sense, because you are saying this country should be different, our company should be different, we should create a better world, right? I is intersex. It stands for someone who is born with genitalia that could be misconstrued as either this or that. So I mean, with intersex people actually ask. Unfortunately, in our country, when they're born, people often do surgeries on them without their consent. Whereas in in other countries, people wait for the child to grow up and then ask them what gender they feel they belong to, and so on. I is an interesting term. A is an interesting term. A stands for allies. Allies are someone who are not part of the LGBTQIA community. Say like for you, who might identify as heterosexual, but who understand that they are supporters, who understand that when you advance LGBTQI rights, everyone flourishes as well. So in that sense, everyone who is seeing this is an ally as well. So it's a big, there's so many terms. When you layer onto this so many other terms, like we're in Bangalore right now, right, Karnataka. So there's Jokta, Jogappa, which is a more local Kannada term for trans. There is a Hijra, which is mostly used in Western North, and there's Kinnar, which is mostly used in Northern India. These are more terms with regard to various transgender communities. So I said I'll come back to trans later. So transgender is when the body that you are born with, you feel that your gender is not the gender that is assigned to you as birth, but you feel your gender is different. For example, you might be assigned male gender at birth, but inside you might be feeling actually that you are not, that you are a woman inside as well. So then you would be trans. In that sense, you can choose to say, I want to go through, you might want to do surgery and transition to your authentic gender. You might wish not to have surgery. You might wish to only dress a certain way. So trans is also a spectrum. So over the years, I mean, first we've had this incredible rich spectrum of gender and sexuality in our country and in the world for years, for thousands of years, and we have all coexisted. Now, over the years, with so many different parts of the world, more and more terms are coming up as people are understanding gender and sexuality more. Right? So I think what's incredible, like for example, if you talk to any of our kids, millennial, Gen Z, they will tell you so many more terms like asexual or pansexual and so many of these incredible terms as well. I think for everyone looking at this to understand that, diversity is the bedrock of who we all are as people. So first, as you said, you identify as heterosexual, and because you grew up in a heterosexual world, you maybe not had to ask all these questions. I think our kids today are growing up in a world where everyone, people are asking more, people are sharing more. So the next generation is growing up in a very different world, in a more plural world as well. So I think for all the employees listening to this, we need to understand that, I mean, we as humankind have been diverse for so many years. What's come at this moment is an interesting moment where people are finally articulating it and sharing it in our homes and in our workplaces. So the reason we are having this conversation is that because our workplaces are also recognizing that we need to be these safe spaces. We need to be spaces where our employees come and flourish. And we cannot do that by not empowering them to talk about certain aspects of themselves, which are so valuable and vital to themselves as well. To answer your question about why is it vital, I think it's very vital. 6 to 10% of any population is LGBTQIA. But workplaces, policies, and so on are not designed for LGBTQIA. They're mostly designed for, heterosexual people. So I think it's very vital that if we want to create a Coca-Cola for all, if you want to serve all your employees, all your customers, if you want to address all your suppliers, all these vendors, then you need to imagine and roll in the imagination of LGBTQI people in this. Just as, despite our best efforts, 50% of people in this world are still identify as women. And in India, we have female infanticide and all these things. We try and kill women as much as we can, but there's still 50% women. So if 50% of your workplace is not women, then we have to ask, we have to say we need to bring women into the workplaces. Right? So if 6 to 10% of people in the world are queer, you need to say that we need to bring people in, we need to create a safe environment. And 50% of your customers are women. So when you imagine your customer, who do you imagine? If you're not imagining a woman, then you're missing out on a customer opportunity. So I think it's very vital to be having these conversations in the workplace because it is essential to business, right? We are your employees, we are your customers, we are your children, we are your parents, right? We are literally everywhere. So we need to be talking about LGBTQ. And I'm just so glad that as a company in your 25th year, you're addressing it seriously. You are wanting to understand. You are wanting to serve. So kudos to you. I must praise all of you for doing all the right things. Like I've been so impressed in this office. I walked in, such a beautiful office. You have an all-gender washroom, which is incredible. I've been talking to you, and you told me that you have policies which are so progressive. You pay for gender affirmation. You do so many things. I hope all of you seeing this understand what an incredible organization you are already working for. And I hope that all of you can really commit to making it an even more incredible organization.
Thank you, Parmesh, for saying that. Also that this is a message that is going out to so many of our associates across different markets, and Coca-Cola operates in so many different places. In all of these things, and this is very rightly said, this is a beginning, this is a thought starter, this is a conversation starter, and there are many more things that we'll have to continue doing to ensure that we are looking at inclusion in a really broad way, and that there are many different groups that often get left out, not intentionally but sometimes even unintentionally, and we want to make sure that everyone feels very included. And so whatever we do in programs such as this one, it is really to reach out to as many individuals as we can, and play this multiple times for them to reflect. And we also realize that this is, whether we like it or not, this is one of the bias that we need to address. And in all the work that we do, even as Coca-Cola globally, there is a lot of encouragement about getting over our bias. Okay? How do we as individuals start to become more aware? You made a lot of efforts learning by yourself. Okay? Many of us have access, but we probably don't know how to go about it. What are some of the things that you would tell us to do that simply addresses the challenge of bias? And given the fact that ultimately the most important thing is the human angle of it.
Yeah.
And we don't want to lose the human side of us. We also want to recognize the bias that each one of us brings of various types. How do we use both these things and learn to overcome the bias together?
So I think first of all, I like the approach that it is human, but I think first of all, as an organization, you have to realize that when you are going on an inclusion journey, you're doing it for multiple reasons. It's going to be fundamental to your business going ahead. I mean, I've read your values, right? It's very much in line. Being inclusive as an organization to everyone, including your LGBTQ employees and customers, is fundamental to your values. You want to serve everyone on this planet. 6 to 10% of people on this planet are queer. So you serving them is part of that, right? They are your employees, they're everything, right? It's part of your values. It also makes incredible business sense. For example, the LGBTQ economy worldwide is worth $5 trillion, according to PwC in 2018. In India itself, Out Now did a study that says the LGBTQ economy in India is worth $200 billion. Now, how much of that does Coca-Cola want? You want lots of it. You want to make more money. You want to survive for the next 25, 50, 100 years, right? Huge financial opportunities that data point after data point is showing, right? There's enough data out there that shows that being inclusive as an organization, Juliet Berg did some incredible research at Deloitte in 2016 that says that organizations which are more inclusive are 8 times more likely to have better innovation outcomes than organizations which are not. 8 times, imagine, right? You want to be that organization. You don't want to be that rival which is less innovative. You want to be that organization which is more innovative. You can keep on innovating products. You can keep on innovating services. You can keep on innovating logistics. You can keep on innovating in your marketing. You want to be the cutting edge. I love your website. It says we are India's fastest growing FMCG company. I hope it's true. You want to remain India's fastest growing FMCG company. You don't want someone else to come and take that. You can't do that without being innovative. Being inclusive makes you innovative. Enough data that says that when you are more inclusive, you will attract the best talent. This is very clear. You know it. Go to college
campuses.
That's
happening across all the markets that we operate in.
They will not come to you if they don't see. Young people today are their fundas are right. They want to work for companies that are not polluting the planet. They want to work for companies that are addressing inequality. They want to work for companies that are treating either themselves or their friends equally. I mean, there's enough. I mean, there's an incredible mingled survey of some years ago, and there was a BCG, IIM Ahmedabad, Keshav Suri Foundation report recently. It all says that even on college campuses, more than 60% of even straight students want to work for organizations which are LGBTQ friendly because they have friends, they have family members. So whichever way you look at it. So I think this one bias that people have is that this is something that is, it's not my concern, it happens, it's othering, this is not, and this is not something that happens to other people, and this is not in other people's interest, it is in your interest. So I hope that everyone who's listening understands that being inclusive is in your values, it is in your financial innovation and human capital interest. It enriches your organization. It makes you more, it makes you, for example, as a straight ally, a better person because you're learning so much, you're exposed to so many different things, you're going on your own learning journey yourself. So I think one thing is that people should understand that people who are being inclusive, organizations and individuals, you're doing it for yourself. You're not acting out of benevolence to other people. You're doing this for your own selfish and enlightened self-interest in which you will benefit. So I think this one bias that people have, we are doing this as some form of charity, or we're doing this as some form of tokenism, rubbish. You're doing this because it's really good for you financially and otherwise. Second, I think a lot of organizations are committed to talking the talk, but many of them don't walk the talk, right? So they make the right noises. But going on an inclusion journey is strategic and it is comprehensive, which means it has to be a strategic imperative from the top. You have to invest money in it. You have to have teams that care about this all the time. I know you have very well-paid and large sales and marketing teams because sales and marketing is important to you. You have finance teams because money is important to you. You have HR teams because your human capital is important. You need to invest in teams that focus on diversity and inclusion. You need to give budgets because lots of work that needs to be done, right? Right from senior leadership training and understanding to active hiring on campuses to building pipelines. For example, you say we want to have, I've been following what you do. I really like that you all are focusing so hard on hiring women in factory shop floors. It doesn't come about just by magic. You have to invest in the pipeline, you have to invest in the training, you have to, by the time the woman joins you on the shop floor, and then you have to make sure that they don't leave you. So it takes time, effort and money. And it's a pipeline that you have to build like this for every dimension. If you care about people with disabilities, you will invest that in building that pipeline so that they come and join you and then they don't leave you. If you care about LGBTQ, you will do the same and so on, right? All of that costs, all of that needs direction, and all of that needs like budget and support. Beyond that, you have to invest in marketing and communication. Like so many beverage brands across the world are using their communication to talk about, there's an incredible brand, it's from Taiwan, not Coca-Cola, another one of your, I won't say rivals, but one of your companies in the same space, which has done this beautiful ad with coffee about a father and a son. And the father, they use the coffee cup. The father uses the coffee cup to say, I think I'm gay. And the son says that, and the father says, I'm okay. They've used the coffee beverage to talk about love and acceptance. So you have so many brands in India. How can you can you show queer couples in your advertising? Can you use your it doesn't have to be on TV. It could be something you do online, for example. It could be something you do around this, right? You have these wonderful campaigns, for example, with people's names, your personalized cans, which I love so much. During Pride Month, can you use your cans to talk about love is love, to talk about inclusion, to talk about all these things, right? So I'm saying, can you work with community organizations on the ground? Right now, there's such incredible work happening. You go to the Northeast, there are great organizations like All Chinky Homo Project. You go to Tamil Nadu, there's Grace Banu running trans rights now, running an incredible agricultural, transgender-led dairy cooperative where trans people are taking care of cattle, producing milk products, selling it in the market. It's a public-private partnership between the state of Tamil Nadu, Grace's organization, and private partners. At some point, y'all will get into the dairy business as well if you aren't already in India, because I'm sure that you want. Globally, milk products are part of your portfolio. Shouldn't you be empowering, doing incredible public-private partnerships with these groups who are already running this on the ground to add value to you through your CSR, but it will also make you money? Like a bias that people have is that it's just about talking, it's just about celebrating days. No, it is about committing to a strategic vision and saying that in our products, there are so many, like Axis Bank in India, for example, is designing products for queer people. Now, thankful you don't have to design banking products for queer people versus straight people. In banking, it helps because maybe queer families are different, have different financial needs. In your business, everyone drinks the same beverage. But
There's a lot of equality here.
there's a lot of equality here, correct? But what can you do with your beverages and addressing us as customer segments as well, right? So I'm saying from hiring to leadership to CSR to branding to communication to everything. If you commit to this comprehensively, the rewards are just incredible. So for everyone listening, please, if you just commit and walk the talk, you can really, really generate, goodwill, money, innovation, everything for you. So
And that brings me to the whole thing. I'm getting goosebumps.
yeah.
Think about it as our own company's purpose, which
Yeah.
is refreshing the world and making a difference. And everyone listening to this will absolutely relate to the purpose. Uh, just think about from what we need to do to create more allies. And I really love the way that you added the allyship in LGBTQA, because that's one of the things that really is not just umbrella. I think it is a role that everyone needs to play very, very actively in bringing, I would say, more onboarding everyone, making them feel comfortable, giving them the space that they need to flourish. And it is the same process that would apply to just about anybody as a talent. And the question is, then tell us about some of the things we should start doing internally to build more allyship. It's often not understood very well. It's also about how do I help someone, how do I reach out to someone, how do I mentor someone, or how do I actually get mentored by someone. So what are some of the tips that you would give us?
You've started already on the right track. So all of these are great. And I really like that you framed it as help each other, because that's what an ally does. An ally recognizes solidarity. An ally understands that they are in the majority, and it is their responsibility to speak for, help, and uplift the minority, right? Straight people are, if queer people are 6 to 10% of the population, straight people are like 90 to 94%, which means as the majority, it is your responsibility to create the safe space for your queer colleagues, customers, vendors to flourish. So how you do that? By doing everything that you said, but first of all, by learning and by listening, and by understanding. And when you learn, when you seek knowledge, and so many movies, so many books, so many talks, right? Read Queeristan, for example. It's got everything.
I'll come to
Yeah.
Kyrgyzstan as well,
Yeah.
because there are some questions that I have on that.
But there are enough books. There are more than 200 books now written about LGBTQ India, which are amazing. From autobiographical stories, like I Am Vidya, this is by Living Smile Vidya, an incredible transgender activist, to beautiful books like Loving Women, this is by Maya Sharma in Baroda, which talks about what it means to be lesbian in rural and small town India again. Incredible. To novels like My Father's Garden by Hansda Sovendra Shekhar, which talks about what it means to be Adivasi and queer. Again, incredible.
Various intersections, actually.
Various intersections. Incredible rich narratives. There are movies. There's Muthan. There's Dear Dad. There's so many incredible movies, right? The Super Deluxe. There's so many. I'm not even talking about the big Hindi films or the web series. Right now, so you see anything on TV, whether it's a Mai, whether it's a Madhuri Dixit thing, whether it's an Arya, everything on TV has queer characters and in different range. So it's actually quite interesting. You can't be ignorant about queerness in our country right now. So learn and recognize that it's as rich and as diverse as heterosexuality, for example. But I would say beyond that, it is your role to set in place infrastructures as allies for your queer colleagues to flourish. Again, why? For your own benefit. You're doing everything for yourself. This is not an NGO. Whatever we do for our own enlightened self-interest. We are in the corporate world. So to be a good ally, why are you a good ally? Because it will help you only. So what do? You stand up for your queer colleagues, because often your queer colleagues are either being bullied, it's difficult, not everyone might be confident or articulate. Often you speak up for your queer colleagues, because if they are closeted, if they choose to be closeted and so on, then you have to speak up. You show up. So for example, if you are doing something at Coca-Cola, you're doing a pride event or whatever, LGBTQ events are not just for LGBTQ people. They are for allies also to show up. You can wear a rainbow flag and you can say, I'm a proud ally. It's good. People won't think you're queer. And even if people think you're queer, so what? It's not a bad thing. So you show up with your support. Same for other things, right? On Women's Day is not just for women. It's for men also to understand that gender is a gigantic construct that we all have to participate in dismantling some, in re-understanding some, and so on, right? When you celebrate events that are for the people with disabilities, it's not only for your disabled colleagues to show up, it's for everyone to look at ableism and how ableism is a construct in which people who are disabled find it so hard to live in. So good ally understands that our responsibility is to show up and to say that we are here. Often I say also to shut up, because sometimes, there's so many examples I see in newspapers or in companies where there are manels. There are 4 men on a manels up, panels with only men on it. Like this one, for example. This is a manel. Correct. So sometimes you shut up. Sometimes you say, if there is a man, just we are 2, so it's okay. But anything beyond 3, I think there should be enough diversity. Even 2, I think it would help. But so what does it mean? Then you say, you know what? I think a woman colleague would do this fine. Or let me push forward someone who is trans. Or it would be really good for someone who is disabled to get this thing. So allyship is in understanding. Allyship is in not just showing solidarity. It's in acting. It's saying, Arey, Baba, you do this. This is good. It's in stepping back also. It's in investing. It's in creating structures of possibility. It is in actually hiring. It is in positive discrimination. I think I'm very clear about this. If you have to create a Coke, a Hindustan Coca-Cola beverages of tomorrow, which looks like society outside, which means 50% women, 6 to 10% queer, 15% disabled, and so on. You have to look at where am I now? And if I have to get to this, then you have to say the next 300 hires are going to be predominantly women, because otherwise I'm never going to move to looking at the society. If that means as an ally you say I am positively discriminating for women, so be it. That's what a good ally does. You say this is where I want to go and these are the choices that I make. And then you explain it to all your colleagues, to all the men. It's normally men who have these issues and say, Arey, you're only hiring more women. Are you discriminating against men? You say, no, darling. There are enough men in the organization. We're hiring more women so that we can bring in that diversity as well. Your place isn't going to go. Of course, if you perform badly or if you talk rubbish or if you don't agree with the values, then please go. But as long as you're on board, it's just that the next bunch of people who come in, we are trying very hard to engineer a diverse organization. So if it means that other things remaining equal, we will hire the woman candidate over the man. Yes. If it means other things remaining equal, if someone says, I'm queer and I want a career with you, yes. Our aim is to attract diverse talent. So I'm saying allyship understands it's not just about talking. It's also about acting. It's about doing. It's about giving your money to CSR to organizations that are doing incredible work, right? I have a concept in my book called Jugaad Resistance, which says that use your position wherever you are doing whatever you are doing to make a difference. If you are in charge of a gift budget, are you going to buy generic pen drives, or are you going to give that money to an organization in the Northeast which is working with trans people and making gifts that you can use? Or to something like Chamar Project, which works with artisanal individuals from the Chamar community, which is a backward caste community, which works predominantly with leather, but whose livelihoods were affected because of the beef ban in certain parts of the country, and you're now working with recycled rubber. These are choices you make. As an ally, you can say, no, I will give my money here. It could be a conference budget, but you will make those choices. You will say, I will hire so-and-so. I will do this kind of advertising. I will this, right? So allyship is constantly acting in the interest of the communities you wish to serve. Again, why? Because it is in your interest. Now, as an ally, see, you're straight. You will never know what it's like to be in a queer person's shoes. But you will understand that I'm sure in your life, it wasn't perfect. I'm sure there were moments where you were discriminated against as well, where you felt this is so unfair. Ally understands that. So, one of the examples I used in my book is Srini, who is straight. He's a straight ally like you. He was working at Intuit, I think Intuit, yeah. And when he saw one of his colleagues who was gay being bullied, people were calling him names and so on. And he said, I had such a visceral reaction because when seeing that incident took him back to his childhood. And Srini is from Chennai, and he grew up, his father was posted in Rajasthan. So he grew up going to schools in Rajasthan. And because of his dark skin, he was called Kala, Kala, Kala all the time in Rajasthan. And he was bullied for his dark skin, which he had no control over. So when he encountered this bullying, he said, I felt so bad. He said, it triggered all my memories of being bullied as a child for something I had no control over. So that incident made him an ally. And today he is the biggest champion of LGBTQ rights, being a straight champion. So good allies understand that. See, you will never know what it's like to be queer, but you must have had some experience in your life where you were treated unfairly. So good ally understands that just as I suffered for no reason of mine, these people are suffering for no reason of theirs, I have to help them. So good allies understand that the struggle for queer rights is related to Black Lives Matter, is related to anti-caste movement, is related to gender, is related to movement for a better environment. All these things are connected. What are all these things? We're all saying we want to create a better world in which we all live peacefully, right? Allyship is empathy to me more than anything else. You understand. You say, I don't know what it feels, but I empathize because I have experienced something similar. So if all of you can tap into that part of you, then you are already good allies. So I just want to address, some more biases since you asked. I get all these like really weird questions. For example, like a very large manufacturing company in India. Some years ago, through the Go to India Cultural Lab which I ran, we did a report on trans inclusion in Indian workplaces where we called heads of HR of about 50 companies and so on. I mean, this person is so senior. He said, yeah, Parmesh, all this is fine for, Google and all these companies, but I am in manufacturing. There are no queer people in my organization. And this organization has about, I think, 50 to 60,000 people or whatever. So I had to tell him that I know 7 queer people on your floor in your headquarters. So this, it's a big bias. Queer people are not only at the, web companies or tech companies. Queer people are everywhere. We're 6 to 10% of every population. We are on your factory floor. We are on your shop floor. We are on your sales team. We are on your finance team. We are on your legal team. We're everywhere. If the onus is on the organization to create a safe and welcoming space for queer people to share these aspects. Straight people are constantly sharing, look what my wife has done, look at my son's report card, look at this, here I went to Ooty for a holiday. Queer people are not sharing, it's because the atmosphere is such that we are not sharing vital parts of our life. So one bias is that, queer people are everywhere. They're not just only in these fancy tech companies. So many other biases. I find it comes up only when you're hiring. This comes when you're hiring. Women are not a minority. Women are 50% of the population. But when people hire women, hiring managers are like, हाँ ठीक है, which means yeah, this is okay. लेकिन merit पे होना चाहिए. But they should be on merit. It comes for queer people. Anyone you hire, anyone who is not man, hiring committees seem to bring in this idea of, let's make sure this is not a diversity hire. It should be on merit. But men, though they hire just assuming men are on merit. Isn't that a bias? Why do you assume that straight able-bodied men you hire are meritorious, whereas anyone who is not that, you have to say we have to hire on merit? How ridiculous. You're hiring everyone on merit. Of course, you want to bring in more talent, so you will work very hard to attract people from various backgrounds to that. But of course, it will be on merit. So, there's so many ridiculous things, and people have such flawed imaginations of what policies will do, right? So many companies, when you say, so I'm so glad you've introduced gender affirmation surgery in Europe. I would love to know about the process of how you brought it on board, because in so many companies, people say, this is good, but if we start giving gender affirmation surgery, tomorrow, what if 100 trans people join us, and what if they all want to do surgery at the same time? Then what will happen? It's so ridiculous. Then you have to tell them, yes, this like saying tomorrow 100 women will join you and they will all want to become pregnant at the same time. So what? I mean, you're a big organization. They will come back from maternity leave, and how you treat them at that moment will determine whether they stay with you or not. So first of all, everyone who is trans doesn't want to do surgery. Secondly, people all don't do surgery at the same time. Thirdly, it's how you do. It's like saying, I have 100 really stressed out men in my sales team. What if all of them get a heart attack at the same time? I mean, you'll deal with it. Yeah, they'll come back. If you treat them badly, they won't come. So but these are weird biases that I'm sure you've dealt with as well. We all have to deal with, and we have to like educate people, to take them on this journey. I think also with knowledge and firmness. So
And these are all parts of a role that every ally has to do.
yeah.
Okay? And so the caring part is as important as much as educating ourselves as well as everyone around us, so that the environment starts to become much more enriching for everybody. And all those examples that you've shared, I'm sure many of them who are listening would have also heard it. And we all know that there is all of these things never happen. It's that there is so much of overthinking that we do, which causes many of these bias in the first place. Actually, they probably may not be as pronounced as we make it out to be.
No, tomorrow if 100 trans people join you, it's good for you.
Absolutely, and that's exactly the point on talent pools as well. And so when you moved from US back to India, and you become a very active advocate for the community, you've been writing, your books have spoken about them. um, Queeristan is one of those that I feel brings about a lot of uh, data, but more than that, it brings a very balanced human view on the whole issue of queerness itself. Yeah. And so tell us more about what actually changed you, or what drove your thinking towards saying, here is another avenue by which I can make a difference.
So first of all, when I finished from MIT, I had nice job offers. Even now, I wonder. I say, should I have stayed? I'd have been in some nice Seattle or Silicon Valley with a house with a white fence, and I would be earning in dollars, and rupee has depreciated so much. So I just feel like, oh, did I do the right thing? But I came back. I made a Shah Rukh Khan has ruined my life, because every time I saw Swades, and Swades, it's such a beautiful story. Even now, when I think of it, I get goosebumps, because it was about someone who comes back to India to light a bulb. And I just happened to see Swades at the same time I was graduating, and I was like, okay, I want to go back. I want to go back home to the homeland. And it was a big difference. I think the difference, and when I came back, I joined Mahindra, and just my experience as a queer person was so different, because when I joined Mahindra, I was coming back at a time where 377 was still on the books in India. And as an organization, when I said I'm queer, and what if my partner, at that time, my partner who was Japanese, was thinking of relocating to India. So I said, what if he comes? Will you offer relocation benefits and so on? And so I met Anand Mahindra at that time, and he said, I don't think our HR knows about LGBTQ inclusion policies and so on, but we will not treat you differently. We will make sure you are treated well. So it was kind of exceptionalism. It wasn't ki let us change the structure, let us create this for everyone. It was like, you have come to me, so I will make sure that you are taken care of. And at that time, I was not so evolved as a person. I was okay to accept this special treatment kind of framework for that. Of course, the relationship didn't survive, and so he never relocated. So we would never know what happened. But and I think a lot of companies at that time, because this was in around 2006, were thinking along those lines. It's not, there's no real policy or whatever. If someone asks, we'll do. If someone doesn't ask, don't bother. By the time I joined Godrej, which was some years later, a lot had changed, I think, on the ground in terms of law, because the Delhi High Court verdict had come of 2009, which decriminalized being LGBTQ, and companies were so much more. By the time I joined Godrej, my questions to Sumit, who is a common friend, and Nisa Godrej, who was my boss for many years, was not, will you treat me exceptionally? The questions were, what are the systems and structures in place to treat queer people? Those were the questions. And then we realized that Godrej had overlooked a lot of these things. And so we began a 10-year journey of working on policies, changing policies, changing how hiring is done structurally, talking about this on all our campuses. So for a decade, I was the Godrej brand ambassador on campuses, and must have touched thousands and thousands of students because every talk was about being LGBTQ. So everything from policies to advocacy to hosting LGBTQ events on our campus to hosting white paper launches. We took the company on a journey towards inclusion within, but also the company decided to become like kind of like a space holder for other corporates to talk about inclusion, LGBTQ inclusion on its own campuses. That was a structural difference. So my first journey was between a company which had performative kind of activism and wanted to be exceptional in some cases to a company which had
almost trying to be like a very paternalistic towards you.
Yeah, that was the first experience. But with Godrej, it was a structural saying, can we as an organization change our structure itself and embed inclusion in it? And the case that worked at Godrej was also a combination of this is in our values. Godrej was founded in the Swadeshi movement. We're deeply committed. So there's a case that said that inclusion is in our values, inclusion is good for us. We are going to go on this journey and see what comes out of it. It's a very comprehensive structural thing. So my first experience in coming back to India was seeing this evolution. And I think Godrej's evolution was in parallel with that of so many other companies. And I'm just so, when I look at your website, I see how proud you are that Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages is so rooted in the idea of India. I mean, it's up and center. You say we are, 100%
inspired by India.
It's Indian owned, it's Indian, our bottlers, our sales, everyone, we're like so committed to this incredible India, right? Like that, there are, the Godrejes, the Tata Steels, and so on. These desi companies kind of led the way, I think, over the past decade in either, doing trans inclusion on shop floors or changing the policies or having these conversations about it. So I've seen that conversation change. And I wanted to capture a lot of this in my book. So to answer your question about the book, Queeristan, and why I went on this journey, because after the 2018 Supreme Court verdict, which finally did away 377 for good in our country, I realized that a lot of things were happening on the ground. I realized that there were companies that had very good intentions, that wanted to unleash their good intentions, but didn't know how. I realized that on the ground, the ecosystem was already being created. If you want to hire queer people today, there are organizations like Pride Circle, Periphery. You can just tap into it and there is a resource pool. You want to support queer NGOs, North, South, East, West, they are there. You want to support queer film festivals, literature festivals, Bombay, Delhi, but even Lucknow. I mean, all over. There's incredible cultural properties you can support. There are queer games happening, for example, next month in Northeast. Why isn't Coca-Cola a sponsor of India's first queer games? I mean, it'd be great for your brands. So all of this is happening, for example. So my realization was companies have good intentions, but don't know how. Infrastructure is coming up on the ground. Law is on our side now. We have the NALSA judgment, which is a progressive trans judgment of 2014. We have Right to Privacy Act of 2017. We have 377 judgment of 2018. And we have a Trans Act, which is not so good, but it exists of 2019. So everything is on our side. So one of the reasons I wrote this book is to help other companies also go on this journey of evolution and to understand that we all have to be stakeholders in creating this more inclusive India that I lovingly call Queeristan. So maybe one day we can change the name of your company to Queeristan Coca-Cola Beverages as well, which will be a more inclusive company that stands for LGBTQ inclusion. I certainly think that one of your favorite slogans I like is Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola. I want it over the next few years to say inclusive Matlab Coca-Cola. I want you all to embrace that for sure.
And you'll be glad. One of the major things that we've changed in the infrastructure and policies has been towards celebrating the purpose of Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And that's to really make sure that everyone feels the same way, and so we provide the same benefits.
Yeah.
And we have stopped using the term as spouse.
Yeah.
And so we are constantly using the term as partner. It could be a married couple, it could be someone who has a live-in partner,
yeah,
someone who's not married, and it just brings together everyone on the same platform.
Yeah.
And helps everyone feel the same way. The life at Coke, as we keep celebrating it, yeah, every time as part of this program as well,
yeah,
it is to bring that alive.
Yeah.
Parmesh, that brings me to one final question that I have is, Pride Month has evolved over a period of time, and it's changed dramatically. And I'm really glad to see that accelerating. And it's accelerating to bring more people together of every interest in a way that we celebrate, bringing together, as you described, the 6% of the population that often feels left out. And I'm really glad that this is happening regularly now. The manner, the method might keep shifting over a period of time. Some of them are more evolved, some of them are not. Even within Asia and within some of our major growing markets, again you'll see a difference. But the intent is coming alive more and more. Um, in an ideal way, how would you like that to be celebrated?
So sure, I think it's incredible how it has evolved. I would like to talk about two things. I think how I want y'all to do it. The first is for your own employees, this idea of in loco parentis that I talk about in the book, and the second is for people outside Coca-Cola, this idea of collaboration and facilitation. So let's talk about in loco parentis first. I think what is the role of an organization? I think in large parts of the world, I think maybe in the West, companies, you know, children kind of become fully formed. They express themselves. They go to college. They really explore so many different things before they come to workplace. So the workplace is a workplace where people come to have fulfilling professional careers, but maybe personal life is outside. I think in certain regions, certainly like ours and other parts of the world, and simply because I don't know how your childhood was like, but mine, I gave a set of exams. I gave a 9th standard exam in which I did well. So my parents said, you must get good marks in your board exams. Then I was pressured to get good marks in my 12th board exams. And I was pressured to like do some stupid entrance. I mean, So essentially my whole life was a series of jumping through hoops of exams to please my parents and society at large. I was never asked questions like, what do you value? What is the meaning of love? What is your favorite color? It's Coke Red, by the way, but no one asked me these questions. So by the time you have employees in workplaces, we are so used to like running. We are so used to squashing our desires, our hopes, our dreams, etc. in this race. So I think certain organizations and certain parts of the world, our responsibility is where we are not just a workplace. We have to act in loco parentis. We have to do all the jobs that our parents didn't do for us to our employees in the workplace. A lot of people who are working at your organization have not had parents who have invested in their well-being. So as an organization, we need to have that safe space where we tell our employees, stop running, relax. This is a safe space. What matters to you? We value you. It doesn't matter to us who you choose to love, right? Just be a good person and so on, right? So I think we have to do some extra work as organizations. And as Pride Month, I want Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverage to understand that we have to do a little more than what is necessary for us straight and queer employees. This is for everyone because we need to focus, which is why I'm so glad you've designed this office to focus on well-being, to focus on whole self, to focus on all these things, because the employees who are entering the workforce in India are not thinking about that. So if you create an atmosphere that can create that, think of just the positive power that will unleash in your own employees. So this Pride Month, I really want you to focus on understanding, loving, and nurturing your straight and queer employees better. For the outside world, I think it's so important that you use all the power that you have. You have so much power. You have money power. You can hire people. You have brand power. You can use your brands to speak for good. You have collaboration power. You work with farmers and so on. What if as experiments, I know you're doing all women or you're trying to have so many more women in your bottling plants. You can do so much. You can say, I want to do a 50% trans bottling plant as an experiment, or I want to train and hire queer people. I mean, there's so much you can do in terms of running these things by working with the community that will generate so employment for the community, but so much goodwill for you. It's truly win-win that you can do, right? You can collaborate with universities across this country. You can help LGBTQ associations. Every business school you go to now has one. And I know because in the past 11 years, I've been launching so many of these. So they're all there, right? You can collaborate. So as an organization, use your collaboration power. It is in your hiring, it is in your brand, it is in your communication. You can commit to so much more. And I think if you do, it's going to be really, 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 really exciting. What you shouldn't do is only talk about it in June and forget about it the rest of the year. Use Pride Month as a start to go on this journey. So yeah.
Parmesh, when you think about future of work now, it's future of work, future of workplace, future of worker, and of course there is well-being also in it. And you also have the senior leadership playing the role of actually orchestrating all of these things and making sure that talent pools like the LGBTQ community is brought in. And we also serve the same group as our consumers as well. What are some of the messages you want to share with our leadership teams?
So yeah, so I'm glad you asked me this question. I think the role of any senior leadership today is to only think of three things. One is technology and technological disruption. The second is sustainability and your own ecological footprint and how you can use technology to be more greener. And the third is inclusivity, diversity and inclusion. I think as senior leaders, if you're thinking of anything else, you're not doing your job well. Everything else should be done by the teams. As senior leaders, you should be obsessed with these three. So inclusion is an imperative. I think all these three things are, and if you look at what's coming out of Davos or whatever, all senior leaders at some of the largest companies in the world are only thinking about these three things. Everything else, I hope you have incredible experts to be managing all those things for you. So if inclusion is an imperative, as senior leaders, your role is to facilitate that, not be that roadblock. So if you are a senior leader and you are playing this horrible role, which I hate, which is called the devil's advocate, please don't. There's always one person in one room where you will say, for example, I want to do all gender washroom, or I want to do 6 months maternity leave, or I want to do whatever. And there'll be someone who will say, let me play devil's advocate for a minute and yevo. As senior leaders, please don't be devil's advocate, not a cool role. Don't actually eliminate that role from your group. Your role is to be facilitator of innovation and ideas and cool ideas. Take bets on experiments in each of these three things. A lot of companies across the world are doing incredible work in this. For example, Chipotle, I would say, coexister in the US, has, in terms of variable compensation for their senior leaders, is very directly linked with inclusion targets, both in terms of numbers and belonging scores. So if the company hires more people from various backgrounds and the belonging score every year increases, senior leaders get like a sweetener. If it doesn't, their bonus gets taken away. So they are directly linking their own financial well-being with their company diversifying more as more. As senior leaders, you can embrace that and say, again, we're in capitalism. Nothing will hurt us more than taking our money away from us. So if we put our money on the line, maybe we'll perform better. Many companies are doing this. Companies like Carlyle are giving, which does venture debt, are giving their investee companies that are more inclusive get venture debt at preferential rates versus those that are not. And if I was a startup, I want to borrow money at a lower rate. So then I'm kind of incentivized to be inclusive so that I can get cheaper money. You have this power at Coca-Cola India, right? You can incentivize your suppliers and other people in your supply chains. You can say, I won't deal with you if you're not doing this. So many companies across the world, and I'm sure you are doing this as well in the US and other parts of the world as well. As senior leaders, your job is to strategically create conditions for inclusion and inclusion initiatives to flourish, whether it is compensation, whether it is in incentivizing, whether it is in creating pipelines. All senior leaders are saying, Are Baba, I want to have more women, more women, more women. But you can't just poach women from other organizations. That's not called having more women. How are you creating pipelines with educational institutions? It could be with business schools. It could be with institutions that you don't normally recruit at. Maybe go to an all-girls college and say, I want, every year I will take 30 of you as my trainees, as my interns, into Hindustan Coca-Cola for 1 year or whatever. So I'm saying, as senior leaders, your role is to let 1,000 of these experiments bloom and flourish so that you are strategically bringing in more people, more ideas. Your job is to say, in communication, for example, your role is to say, why do the people in our ads all look the same? Why is everyone thin, fair, and able bodied? Why are all couples in all our advertising heterosexual couples? Can we not have some of our communication which looks like the world outside? Can we not have someone on a wheelchair in our ad? And where we are not talking about the disability, but we're talking about love. Can we not have a queer couple? Can we not have someone, and this is, with a hijab? I'm just saying there are so many ways as senior leaders where you can say, no, I want you to think differently in terms of hiring. I need you to think differently in terms of this. I need you to think differently in terms of representation. So there's lots that I think senior leaders should be focusing on. Essentially, they need to be empowering everyone below to go out there and try a whole bunch of things so that, sustainability, technology, and inclusion, your company really progresses along these. And I hope that everyone listening follows.
Parmesh, thank you very much. Wonderful having you on this Big Byte session on inclusion. And this is really a great way in which we can launch the Pride Month with all your insights and very valuable advice. So, cheers. Let's say cheers to that.
Thank you. I hope everyone seeing this realizes how inclusion is good for you. It's also a cool thing to do, just like this bottle of Coke. It's cool, it's good for you. I don't know why you wouldn't want to be more inclusive. And as I said before, and I repeat, for me, it's been Thanda Matlab Coca-Cola, but I want to think inclusive Matlab Coca-Cola. So please keep on doing more and more so that I go on this journey as well of inclusion with all of you as well. So thank you for everything that you have been doing and will do for the LGBTQ and other communities in our country.
Cheers to inclusion.
Cheers to inclusion.